oh shit, I gotta take the standby. Hey, see, you can tell Alex is in charge. I came to get my stuff right. Look, welcome to Bass and Brews live on a Friday night. Impromptu. We're gonna have. Hey, look at me. My man has his Red Bulls. Lord, he ain't gonna sleep. He's gonna be up fishing at 3:00 in the morning. What's up, man? We got Joe Labarbera. I know how to pronounce his last name, Ralph. We got him joining me. We might have some other people join us. I don't know, but we're gonna talk fishing tonight. We just gonna talk whatever comes up. We here. So we're gonna go there. Joe, what's up, Hoss?
What's happening, buddy? Living the dream.
Big bass streams?
Always.
You been fishing lately, or you been working? What you been up to?
Well, so I've been doing a little of both. Went out with some buddies on Oneida last weekend because my lower unit's in a few pieces. Blew the gearbox up, like 2 weeks ago. It's keeping me from going to Texas right now, or I'd be probably leaving. I'd probably be there already. We have Kurt Dove's pro bass camp down on Amistad that I have to miss now while I'm waiting for warranty parts to come in. But yeah, it was blowing like 62, nice and easy across Oneida a couple weeks ago. Gearbox flew into a million pieces. So just waiting for a new one to come in, and we'll get her all fixed up. And I mean, honestly, like, it's all right though, because now when I do get her fixed, it's just like full on in New York. Like, I think temperatures are rising on Cayuga and Oneida, so the smallies are going to start spawning here on Oneida like yesterday, and the largemouth will start spawning at Cayuga a couple, just shortly after that. So it'll be hot and heavy. Like, things in New York happen really fast. So that's the thing about like Minnesota, the Northeast, stuff happens quick. So, I mean, grass grows fast, spawn comes and goes fast. They get into their summertime patterns fast. So, like, you got to be ready. So, like, Red Bull is just to fuel the continual tackle prep that takes place every single night in the palace here. And yeah, so we're good. Life is good. I got nothing but fun things ahead of me.
So you said Minnesota and then the Northeast, and I just got a geography lesson from Sean the Fisherman over at Jugs and Bugs. And okay. Hey, Frank, we got Frankie. Woo!
Oh, yeah, I got to pull up the comments.
yeah. I should have given you some admin rights to help me with the comments. Though that's probably the only comment we're gonna get tonight. But that's all good. If it's Frankie commenting, we good. We good. If Frankie wants to come on, you holler at me, Frankie. I'll send you the link. But the Northeast apparently does not encompass New York, and I got chastised from that by Sean the Fisherman, and I was like, you know what? If it ain't the Carolinas, Georgia, and parts of Virginia, it's everywhere else. It's out yonder ways.
Yeah, I feel you.
So you. Everything's about to kick off. Spawning smallies. What about the largemouth bite? What the largemouth going to be doing?
So the smallmouth tend to pop off first wherever we live. So, like, Oneida is the most shallow fishery of all of them in New York. So everything will usually happen there first, unless you go like over to Buffalo and Lake Erie in Western New York. They're already like in it now over in Buffalo, which is like 3.5 hours from me. If I go an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours north, I'm at Oneida. So things have started in Western New York. Oneida will pop off, and then we'll move up to the river and Thousand Islands after that. And while the smallmouth are spawning on Thousand Islands, the largemouth starts spawning on Cayuga, and Seneca and Keuka, and so like things will really be kicking off like all through June, and it's like the 27th today, something like that. Yeah. So like, I mean, there's always something going on in June. You just can kind of bounce from lake to lake, and the smallies will go. And as soon as the smallies get like hard post spawn, the largies start going in a lot of those places.
So are you just targeting the smallies during this time? Because, you know, in my, what I know of smallmouth fishing comes from the folks that I follow that smallmouth fish. Do you just continue to target those, or will you go and target those largemouth when they start spawning?
Just kind of depends. Like Oliver and I are gonna film some stuff, largemouth, like big bait related on Cayuga. I mean, it kind of depends on like where our tournaments are going, what kind of spring we had. See, we don't start tournament fishing in the state of New York until June 15th. The law and like you're not
Damn.
allowed to target smallmouth in a lot of counties in New York until June 15th. You're not allowed to target black bass species. So, like, you know, I do a lot of perch fishing, a lot of walleye fishing with my bait casting rods. You know,
Are you catching those to eat, or are you just catching on the field of tug?
Catching those. I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I'm
Don't play with my emotions.
no. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, you know, nothing beats walleye. I'll eat that fish over any other species of fish on the planet. Like, that's my favorite fish. I mean, nothing like release the grease, buddy. Like, I love it. Yeah, but like, no, I mean, we're not. I'm not up there, and I won't be up there. Like, you can fish at Oneida even before you can keep them, but they won't issue tournaments unless they're paper tournaments, like catch, weigh, release, take a photo. And I don't fish those. Like, those are usually dominated by locals on Oneida, and I'm not a local. And here's the thing too, is like a lot of the fisheries in the Northeast, a lot of them have like creeks and rivers that flow in and out of them, right? Mm-hmm. So like Oneida has a river that flows in on the east side and a river that flows out on the west side. So there literally is a river that moves from east to west through the lake, through all 22 miles of the system. And a majority of these paper tournaments are won in the rivers because around like late October, all of the bait runs to the rivers for the winter. And well, not all of it, but a majority of it. And then those smallmouth will follow. And then a lot of those smallmouth will stay where their food source is and spawn in the rivers. And like, I have no desire to fish in there because none of the summer tournaments will ever be won in there. So like, I don't get involved in learning that, because I'd rather spend my time either going south to the Carolinas or to Virginia to start my season. And then, you know, I know New York when it's important to know it if you're a competitive angler. So like, I don't know, and I spend a lot of the winter like decompressing, like fishing for steelhead and stuff anyway, that I'm just not, I don't really get into that. Like, I mean, I'm not like a homebody that just fishes this body of water and follows them in and out all year. Like, I move around a lot, so I don't know. It's a tricky thing, but I know how to fish a tournament, starting on opening day, and that's what's important. If you're in the same mindset as me, I have a lot of friends that are already at Cayuga smashing the crap out of them, but like.
Yeah, Frankie just said Slay Nation had an event on Cayuga and in New York versus
paper
their PA club. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a paper tournament.
What kind of bags are you expecting when you get up there to start fishing with those smallies?
Oh, I mean, like, so opening day 2 years ago, COVID year, it took like 28.5 pounds of smallies on Cayuga, and it took almost 31 pounds of smallies on the St. Lawrence.
Dang, yum.
Yeah.
Dude.
Okay. Yeah.
I think we talked about this when you were on Bass and Brews, the real podcast. Well, the fake
real podcast.
I told Andrew last night, Andrew invited me on because he had nobody to pick from. So he invited Drunkwood and me on last night for the Series.
I love John. John's fishing. The man.
Yeah.
He didn't wear a Speedo, did he?
No, he actually had all clothes on, and he didn't even act the fool. I was a little disappointed. But Andrew had us two on for their fantasy fishing, and I was like, man, you must be hard pressed if you invited us two assholes on the podcast on the serious angler one. But we had we had a good time. We had a good time. That's huge fish. And what I was saying, we talked about this on the other podcast, is used to 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20, I don't know. People thought bass fishing was in the South, right? And that's where the big bags came from. But you're talking about 30-pound bags of smallies coming out in these tournaments. Dude, that's the 6-pound average. I'm not good at math, but I know 6 times 5 equals 30. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see a lot of that down here. I mean, obviously we had Lake Fork, and you get Santee, and you get some of those. But man, those and from what I see and the people that I know now, like you're catching that shit all day if you get into the right school.
So here's the thing. The Great Lakes fisheries are changing. Zebra mussels got introduced like 12 years ago. Gobies like 8 to 10 years ago, depending on who you ask. Yeah, they're changing the fishery, but here's the slammer on all of that is like there are days where those fish aren't accessible. And you and I talked about it, I think, on the podcast we did together before. Like, there are days that Mother Nature protects those fish, and like, I'll win a 3 or 4 day tournament up there at some point in my lifetime because I'm really good at fishing when it's awful. I do have a hard time competing with those guys on flat, calm conditions. Just because like the way I like to fish, kind of puts me in the numbers, and like 22, 23 pounds in the summer is a lot different than 25, 26 in the summer. I mean, there's a big distance between those 3 pounds. And, like, because there's just so many days those fish aren't accessible. I mean, you hear about the big sacks that we have because a lot of it is happening when the rest of the country sucks. But here's the thing is like, we aren't fishing for these fish when you guys are catching your big bags in the winter.
That's right.
Like, I mean, ideally in my life, 5-10 years down the road, I'd want to be on the Tennessee River in November through March 1st, and I'd want to be here, or and I'd want to be here in the summers, like I'd want to split my time. I think most bass anglers would probably say that you want to be in upstate New York when the fishing's good, but like you don't want to frickin' be here when the fishing sucks because the weather's horrendous, man. And that's just the way of the world. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know we had Polinick on the BBD live stream last night, and I mean, he said he had 31 pounds in an hour yesterday on Fork. So like, there's other fisheries that are way better. Don't get me wrong. But where we live, I'm very lucky to have access to a lot of good stuff. But if gas would go back down under $4 a gallon instead of being $5, anybody can access any of the bodies of water that they want. I mean, I'm not afraid to drive anywhere, man.
But and so you say that too, right? Like Fork's doing this thing. We talk about the seasonality of stuff, and that's what MLF and Bass have done. Though is their schedule is based off of the best times to go catch fish. And now, obviously, weather can fuck that stuff up. But in general, that's what we see. They're chasing the spawn, right? I mean, they're pre-spawn, spawn. They're in those
for largemouth.
Well, even I guess now. I mean, they're going to start their northern tours now.
They won't hit really even like on anything in New York. Like, this is the thing too. It's like So we just talked about how these first tournaments of the season are pretty hot. Well, things will slightly decline a little bit for a little while. And then once, like, while you have fish like that are coming out of the spawn, they'll get funky for like a week. And then when the majority of the fish get into like true post spawn and start transitioning into summer, it'll start to heat up again. And like it's kind of like what Zona does on his show. We end up moving around lakes, or you'll move 50 to 100 miles north or south on these lakes to go chase different water conditions. It's like Champlain's 120 miles long. So what's happening at Ticonderoga isn't what's happening in Missisquoi Bay on the Canadian border and up in Rouse's Point. And like when things are hot on the St. Lawrence River, when that dies off, we move out into the lake. And that, you just end up chasing conditions and stuff. I mean, once you get kind of dialed into liking a certain stage, you tend to kind of stay on that stage instead of park, in an area or a region for a few weeks and follow those fish in and out. Like you chase the fish that are doing what you like them to do. And that's kind of how a lot of us become successful, is we start driving around, whether it's in the boat or in the truck, to chase the stage of fish. Like I love catching, smallies like on beds, but really that's not the most successful way for me to catch smallies. I also I catch more and bigger ones when they start moving post spawn and I can get them to chase. So when I can,
they're in those mega schools at that point too, right?
Well, depends on what body of water you're on, but like you can pull up on some stop signs on some highways, and you can go to work with a crankbait, or go to work with top water in the morning, and you can go to work on some of these spots, and if you fish 25 spots in a day, like you can catch 75 fish no problem.
Damn.
Like that's kind of what I like to do. That's when I tend to do the best, is when I can catch post spawn smallies that are on the move, because I want to fish fast. I want to catch them on a glass rod. I want to catch them on treble hooks. Like that's just my style. I'm never going to win a tournament with a flogger where, but like I see Garrett Paquette talking about how tomorrow's opening day on St. Clair and he's fired up to go use a flogger. Like I'm never going to win a tournament with a flogger. I like catching them that way. It's fun, but like searching for those bedded fish isn't necessarily like searching for and then targeting them isn't my strength. Like I don't know, I don't put a lot of time into that, because I don't think it's where I'm gonna cash the best checks. There's not really a lot of checks to be cashed for me.
So you talked about just a couple minutes ago, you talked about those bass being accessible, and I'm assuming that's weather related, primarily with winds. Correct me if I'm wrong, but enlighten us, like dive into that. What do you mean by those fish being accessible in that area? And does it correlate to lakes down south? What does that look like?
Well, okay, so for us, no matter what Great Lake you live on, the prevailing winds tend to be coming out of like the west southwest and traveling, in a northeasterly direction. And like, so those winds blowing across Lake Erie, blowing across Lake St. Clair, blowing across Lake Ontario, they protect those fish, because Erie and Ontario are 300 miles long. And when you get waves that build for 300 miles, even if it's blowing over in Rochester, we're going to feel it up in Henderson Harbor and Chameau Bay. And like all of the shows that everybody sees, like where Zona goes to, Lake Ontario, where you watch Zaldane shot tiger tunas a couple years ago. Him and Johnny made northern tiger tuna's video. I'm 99.9% sure they launched out of Chameau, and like there are times you can't even get out of Chameau because like 8-footers will stack into the entrance to Chameau Bay.
Damn.
And like, I mean, you just can't, unless you have a 42-foot cruiser, you're not getting out of there. I mean, I've had buddies fish tournaments in the river and go out into the lake and then drive a couple bays down and get into Chameau Bay, and then the wind kicked up and they couldn't get out. So like they had to like call somebody to like drive to the boat launch at Chameau Bay and come get them, and like get their keys, drive back to, you know, French Creek and Clayton, and then drive back down with their trailer. And you know, like the weather protects these fish out on these fisheries a lot of days of the year. Like we're not fishing for these fish 150 days a year. It's not happening. These fish, I will say this though, these fish in weeks though are gonna get pounded. Like the amount of people that flock to Clayton, New York on June 15th is astronomical. Like trying to get an Airbnb or a hotel up there or in Watertown it's insane. I mean, literally, like it's bananas. Like Saturday is the 18th of June and it will be the craziest day of the year, and it always is. I mean, it's complete and utter madness. I mean, you can look across seas of boats like it's North Carolina's opening day in a tournament, or like there's a high school tournament in Texas with 300 boats. Like it's bananas. And you know, like it's just like our time of the year when it gets fun. But you know, it's kind of just knowing your way around New York.
So are people either going to catch smallies and a largemouth here or there, or can they target largies? And you know, if you catch a bag of largemouth, what is that going to be up in that area? Because y'all don't have small largemouth. I mean, you got some big largemouth. You got big water. Is it going to be a mixed bag if people go for that type of bite?
No.
Or are they going to do one? Can you do one or the other if you're in that time period?
You're just going to do one or the other. But if you're trying to win a derby, like they'll have derbies on the 18th of June. And people are just going to they're based on the conditions. That's going to dictate what people are going to fish for. Like, so it's different at Cayuga every year. Like some dudes will catch smallmouth some years, depending on the spring we have, and it'll be a largemouth tournament others. Like it's truly just dictated by the conditions. Like you're going to fish the fish that to win. And it's never a mix unless I don't want to say it's never a mix. Much never is, but there are certain conditions on Cayuga where it could be. Just because like there's that lake it's very unique, and I'm sure it's the same on Champlain. Like there could be guys out of Plattsburgh that catch a mixed bag too if there's a Plattsburgh tournament on Champlain, just because those fisheries from one end on the south to the other end of the north, the conditions like water temperatures and stuff, those circumstances differ greatly. So I mean, like huge local advantage to people that drive around and drop aqua views 10 and 20 feet down to read water temperatures down deep and stuff like that. So like guys like me who drive 2 to 4 hours to go to these fisheries, 6 to go to Champlain, like, you know, I'm never going to win a big opening day tournament there, but you know, it's neat to go because the experience definitely teaches you a lot about just those cycles that these fish go through, and all that information just helps you translate it into a summertime win when you're ready to apply what you've learned.
When is you're fishing the open? When's the opens? When is your next open tournament? Like what's the next big tournament that you're fishing?
July 7th is at Oneida, 7th, 8th, and 9th. So like those fish will be protected in practice by 4th of July party boats. That place is nuts on the 4th of July, like nuts. It is going to be bananas. It'll be really like the boat ramps will be packed. I mean, there will be drunk people everywhere on the lake. It'll be ridiculous. I mean, the tournament will be really good for the people who are really familiar with how that tournament or how that body of water is affected by 225 boats and plus, recreational boat traffic. But that tournament will be miserable again, and there will be people swearing off going to Oneida after we fished it in 4.5 footers for 2 straight days last year, and now it's going to be like the craziest. Like the fishing will be way better. The weights at the top will be way better, but it'll frustrate the living daylights out of the bottom half of the field again.
So are you going to be fishing swim baits, glide baits? We know that's your thing. Like that's what you like to do. So is that going to fit in your wheelhouse with that?
The fish will be more accessible to catch them the way that I like to catch them for sure. Like when we fished last year, it was the final weekend in July, whereas this year it's the second, it's like, the 7th instead of the 28th. We were 3 weeks later last year. So like I coached camp last year for Kurt Dove the week that the Open is this year. And like I've called Oneida my home body of water for this will be the 5th year in a row now. Deep, like they're not bumping out to like full-time summer mode, and the grass isn't nearly as thick, and they're more accessible to catch them the way that I like to. You can kind of fish faster, and the way that I like to fish that lake is I like to run like 20 to 50 spots a day, and I want to fish fast if I can. Yeah, it's only 22 miles long, but there's a lot of hot spots, and it depends on the wind direction a lot too, how many spots I'm going to run in a day, like because the wind dictates a lot of your fishing there. Wind direction, because it moves bait, and those smallmouth bass, they're like spots, how spots follow the herring, like smallies will follow the perch a lot in a lot of these systems. And the gobies are changing that a little, but it doesn't change the way that hasn't changed the way that I fish the lake a whole lot. But yeah, I mean, it'll be fun. It'll set up more in my wheelhouse. There'll be less caught on a spinning rod this year and more caught on thick line, bigger baits, moving baits, that kind of stuff for sure.
So I got if any who the 5 people who are listening, if you have questions, throw them out here. Joe is a wealth of knowledge in all of fishing, but when you get into the swim bait world, the guy knows what he's talking about. Now, I want to ask you this. You've said it numerous times. You talk about fishing fast.
Yeah.
And fishing fast down in the South means we're throwing spinner baits, chatter baits, square bills. Even if you get deep, you're still fishing fast with some deep crankbaits, right? You think moving baits, you think covering water. What do you mean by fishing fast in talking about these northeastern lakes?
So for me, it depends on the body of water. Like fishing fast for me at on Lake Ontario is finding a 3/4 ounce or 1 ounce spinnerbait bite. Fishing fast for me on Oneida is usually 6 to 8 XD, cranking hard, like hard and fast. Same at Champlain.
That mag rebound with those, you're using that mag rebound for those 6 XDs, right?
6, yeah, for the 6, and it's a toss up for the 8 for me. Like Brandon's glide bait rod, I'll throw is what I throw a 10 XD on. So I'm kind of in the middle when it comes to the 8. So I've kind of like Brandon has a prototype 8XD rod, which is like it's like his glide bait rod, but like a power down. So apparently, I had a few. I requested that I get a couple of them too because I wanted them. I mean, I have some other stuff like even though I helped design or test some of the models that we use for Alpha Angler, like I do run a lot of other brands. Like I'll fish a rod for like a year and then sell it on Bass Boat Central a lot. Like I like to buy a lot of the cool stuff in the industry, try it for a year and flip it just because knowing what Megabass and Dobbins and Phoenix rods and what a lot of other brands are doing, Daiwa especially, it kind of helps with some input to help Alpha Anglers stay current too. Like I like to know what everybody else is trying to do. And because when you're really familiar with those lines, it kind of what the majority of consumers are seeing, because that affects how we build and market a rod for Alpha Angler too. Like we're a small brand, like it's basically a garage company that Jake started, and you have to kind of consider what's everybody doing mainstream, and if we try to do something outside the box, we have to make sure it's still something that consumers are going to be familiar with, because you don't want to build something as a direct to consumer company and have it flop, because that's a lot of liquidity wasted. So,
well, and trying the different products, that's the R&D side of it, and that's how you dial it in, because y'all are a niche. The Alpha Angler rods are a niche. What you're doing, you're targeting specific people, so knowing how to build a rod for those people is it. Now we got a couple questions I want to get to real quick. One is from Anthony Whitney, our boy Anthony. He's one of the Hooks at Hoodlum guys, working through some cancer stuff right now. So y'all go show him some love. But Anthony says, "What's your favorite swim bait under $50, Joe?"
So like really, if I'm gonna spend under $50, it's actually not gonna be like a hard bait. It's not gonna be like a glide style bait. I'm gonna probably buy an 8-inch mag draft, or maybe I guess I'll say it. So more often than not, I'm gonna throw a 5.8-inch Gancraft Bariki shad. And the Bariki shad is a soft bait. It's 5.8 inches long, and I'm going to rig it on that BKK Titan Diver Plus. And if you guys want to see that hook, just go watch the episode Paul and I did last time.
Yeah, we talked about that.
I mean, and like it's a full size swim bait hook. Comes with different size weights that you can interchange. You can put a blade on it or take it off. And I'm going to fish a soft bait under $50 for sure.
And on the soft bait, you mentioned on the last time we recorded that, a soft bait versus a hard bait, you're going to get less bites on that soft bait, but typically they're going to be bigger. So, if you are targeting a bigger fish, that soft bait lends to that. Now you might get 3 bites or 5 bites, right? But you're typically going to get that bigger bite on that soft bait as well.
Yeah. And I think that, so Brandon always fishes the Arashi Glide, right? That's also under $50. And one of the reasons Brandon fishes it is because he's still gonna get 2.5 pound bites on that fish, or on that bait, and he's still gonna land a lot of fish, and he's not taking any fish out of the equation.
Right.
I definitely, especially as I get into the bigger and bigger soft baits, when we start getting into 8 inches and 10 inches and big soft baits, Huddleston, my favorites, the Defiant 210 and 247, like you're not going to get, so you don't have like all that noise, and there's not split rings banging together, and like you're not. There's all these negative cues in this thing, right? When you get a soft bait, there's not all these negative cues, and these fish don't get distracted. They're going to stare at it harder. But when you trick the big one, when you trick a fish, usually it's the big ones, and when they commit really hard. And landing percentages is super high because there's no treble hooks with a big soft bait usually. Like I change out the harness. I don't use that mag draft silly harness. So a lot of your rigging options can be very customized to the fish, and it tends to be that bait that puts me over the top. I think a lot of tournament anglers are going to hard baits because you're still going to get a lot of bites on it. And I'm really, if I'm fishing a big bait in a derby, I'm not interested in getting a lot of bites.
That's right. That's right.
I'll throw a crank. For me, I'm gonna throw a crankbait to get a lot of bites. Like that's how I'm gonna get numbers in the Northeast.
Yeah.
And when I slow down and throw a big guy, that's when I'm gonna win.
I'm going to make a note here because I want to come back to this because we got another question, but I want to come back to this because I listened to a podcast with Ben Milliken talking about catching big fish, and I think it was straight. I think it was on one of the stray casts, and he talked about that. So I made a note. We'll come back to that. Anthony is also in Louisiana, so to put perspective on what he's asking, he's in that Louisiana area where there's not a lot of deep water. You're fishing mud, you're fishing bayous, little creeks and stuff like that. Does that change any of those that recommendation for him?
No, I mean, that's what I like about soft baits too. Is a lot of people were introduced to like the Huddleston.
Excuse me. He might not be in. He might be anyway. He ain't up north. He's in the south.
Same answer.
So, yeah.
It's
right.
so
out yonder.
A lot of people think of two soft baits. They think of the Hud, which you fish deep and slow, and you think of the mag draft, which rides high. What I like about the Defiant and the Gancraft is they're very versatile. Right? They have different rigging options, and you can with the Defiant you can buy different sink rates and stuff. I mean, I can fish those in 6 inches of water to 26 feet of water. Both of those baits, I have no trouble moving that much in the water column with both of them. So like, just tackle advancements that we all see. Most of us as normal consumers see changes in crankbaits and spinnerbaits, but like me, I live in the swim bait world. I'm seeing I'm very familiar with all the changes we're seeing in that equipment. And, there's a lot of advancements that are allowing us to be very versatile. And if you're into that style of fishing, you can do whatever you want. I mean, so like if I went down there and I was used to fishing in 6 inches to 6 feet, I'd be throwing a 4.0 size square bill around. And then when I felt like I got on a really good bite, then I'd be going to my big baits and just keeping them riding high. I'd rig them and weight them and balance them to just ride higher. Whereas in our deep clear fisheries, I'm throwing 6XDs a lot, or 5, 6, 8XDs. And then when I'm in the zone and I want to try to get a big bite, then I'm throwing swim baits that I kind of have to let sink down and get down, and I weight them heavy. So once I start grinding them in, then they're staying down. Yeah. So I'm familiar with this style of fishing because it's where I live. But as soon as I go to Virginia, that all changes. Like the first open of the year, I didn't fish in more than 3 feet of water,
Yeah, and he's in Texas, so yeah, I messed that up.
Yeah.
But Texas, Louisiana, same, about damn near same place. So our next question comes from Mike's Out Fishing on the YouTube.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. Favorite smallmouth bait color? Oh, damn, bait color postponed.
So this is going to be really funny. If I can run a trout color all year, I'm going to run it. I mean, jerk baits. Because here's the thing. Is like living in the Northeast, we have a lot of alewives. We have some shad. But like, if you run a trout color, it looks like just about everything except a perch and a bluegill. So like most of my baits, dude, I'm running in a very boring, stinking color, like, because this is the thing, is it matches so many of our forages. It's just what I do.
Color, so what you're saying is color doesn't really matter. It's the depth and the speed.
Here's how I look at it, and some people might disagree, but like, I don't want something,
because you're here, they're not.
I don't want something that is very specific, and this is why. Is like, we have a lot of forage species here, and fish can see, especially smallmouth, can see that our baits from so far away that, like, if you have really, really detailed baits, right? To me, those fish can pick up on cues of those color patterns and details of those baits that they can say no to really easy. And if you have like really boring ass colors, I feel like those fish, they don't have anything to turn them off to it, because I want them to focus on the action of these baits, and I don't want them to get a good look at it. And I'm not going to spend like, okay, so here's like, not to go off on a tangent, but here's like one of my biggest pet peeves in the fishing industry is like companies that make a perch color, especially like a jerk bait, and they don't make it right for like the areas of the country that you're fishing a jerk bait. All right. So like Megabass makes like 4 stinking perch colors. And like, in my opinion, only one of them is even anywhere close to what perch actually look like in our clear bodies of water. To me, you guys have ring perch down in the South, right?
I don't know. Hell, I don't know. We got white perch is what we call them. They look like a white bass, except they smaller and they got razor blades for gills.
All right. So here's the thing is, our perch aren't very yellow. Like our perch up here, when the water gets really clear, now they're different. They're different colors in the winter when there's ice over their heads. But in the summertime, clear water, you know, we have like the most minimal visibility is like 8 feet, and that's like Oneida. But like St. Lawrence River, there are areas of the river and lake in certain conditions where you have 30 feet of visibility. All right. It's like, so fish, like, if you have a bright yellow fish with really freaking orange ventral fins, the thing sticks out like a sore thumb and is like easy prey for any predator species, right? Muskie, northern pike, smallmouth bass. So like all these forage species that in the summertime under sunny conditions, when we have, like 14 hours of daylight or more, their colors start to become really muted, right? And that's what I want my baits to be, really muted, that kind of match these forage species, because even a perch mutes out. Now in the wintertime, where there's a lid of ice over their heads, these fish's colors will darken up. Perch get really black and yellow, and they look like your ring perch that like I was catching down on the James River with Oliver. So like, to me, that's why I get a lot of trout patterns, because they're soft. They're soft silver. There's a little tiny bit of pink in there, gives them a little bit of a like iridescent hue, and that's mostly what I'm fishing is that muted out stuff. I don't like a bluegill color that's like a pumpkin seed. Like, I want a brim color that's very muted out. Like, I want all of my baits to be real boring. Or like, it just so happens I have these sitting next to me. I'll either go really boring or like hold on, where's like a good bait to look at. If I don't go really boring, I'll go really crazy stupid. Right? So, but never like a really detailed forage species that they can get a good look at. Like Ayu's a good color. Any of the like light trout patterns are good colors. Perch, if it's a really boring ass perch, those are where I kind of stick to. I like to buy a lot of Ayu colors too if I want to fish a perch dominated body of water. I'll buy like Ayu and I'll like stipple in the right colors. Like I'll just give it a little bit of stripes, or maybe even make it look like a crappie sometimes. Like, but it's got to be boring ass. Like it can't. Nothing specific.
Awesome. I hope that answered their question. Now we got a question. We're going to get that in a second. The question is, do you use fluorocarbon mostly up north? But what here? Let's go here. Best fishing is in Washington State. I mean, like for salmon, or what the hell are you talking about? Because we talk about bass fishing.
Alpha's located, and like the Columbia River does rock, and like bass was supposed to go there a bunch of years ago, and I think it would be great if the Bassmasters went back, or the NPFL is supposed to have a Western swing. I believe next year they're scheduled to. I mean, gas prices are going to have to go down, or the NPFL anglers will never want to all 125 of them drive out there. But no, there's great fishing. I mean, and Alpha Angler's located in Spokane, the very southeast corner. And yeah, I mean, I'm very familiar with the Columbia River just from talking to Jake and Brandon, and it's not a far drive for them. So I'll give that guy a little props for saying that. I mean, it's not the best, but I'm glad he's happy at home.
Hey, the best is the best at what you have. And so if that's the best of what you got, then it's the best, and can't nobody argue with that.
And potholes is a pretty diverse fishery up there too. So I run social media for Alpha Angler too. And a lot of our guys in the summer are posting, tournaments from the potholes, which is, I guess, pretty popular. I think it's like right in Jake's backyard too. So, yeah. Good for you guys. It's a good fishery. Better than Oregon,
Dude, I fought fire in Hales Canyon, Oregon, and there's a reason why that some bitch has the name Hales in it.
Is it bad?
Yeah. Oh, dude. It's beautiful country, but when you're fighting fire, scorched earth, it's hot, it's smoky, it's dusty. Like that shit sucks. Next question. Ty Melton says, do you use fluorocarbon mostly up north? And Ty, if you're still on, maybe you can elaborate on some specifics, swim baits.
A lot of
what are you talking about? But go ahead from there.
Anytime, and this is me, this is not everyone. And you'll hear Mark Zona give you a totally different answer. His is the exact opposite of mine. Anytime I have a bait that's going to touch the bottom, even if it's a moving bait, if it's going to touch the bottom, I'm running braid to fluorocarbon always. That's just me. I fish a lot of braid to fluorocarbon leaders, even on bait casting rods. That's just me.
Crankbaits?
Crankbaits, when I fish for smallies, they don't touch the bottom.
Okay. So you don't
fish a crank. I don't fish a crankbait in the north for smallmouth like I fish a crankbait for largemouth, or like most of the country. See, we've been trained as consumers and as students of bass fishing to think you need a crankbait to deflect off of something, right? Not fishing for smallmouth. All right. Like if I'm fishing in 18 feet of water for smallies, I'm throwing a crankbait that only gets 16 or 17 feet down. I don't want it to hit the bottom, because when it does, it slows it down. And I don't want these fish to get a good look at it. I'm casting it as far as I possibly can, and I am burning the crap out of it. Every once in a while, I'll kind of kick the reel handle or pause it a little, and then I'm right back on a 7-to-1 as fast as I can fish.
So you're fishing a 7. You're fishing a 7. So you're targeting those suspending. Are they suspending? Then I'm guessing no.
No. They're just smallmouth will eat up. Smallmouth will eat up.
So they're going to
Water's
come
very
get
clear.
it.
Yeah, they're going to chase it. They're going to chase it.
Different. That's different in the South. You won't, especially in the summertime, right? You want the same thing. You want speed. You want that crankbait down there, and I use a 5-to-1 typically cranking, but you want to get that crankbait, but you want it to come down and dig, and you're reeling it fast. You want it bouncing off of stuff. You want acting the fool on the bottom, but you want it fast. Now, if you're catching them on that back hook, or they're hitting and missing or coming off, then maybe you slow it down, and then maybe you throw a swing head, or a Carolina rig or something. But for us down here, when we're cranking in the summertime, the dead of summer, we want that crankbait down on the bottom. You want it digging and bouncing, and you want it cutting trenches in the water. That's a little bit different.
Well, so here's the thing: is where you guys live, the dead of summer, these fish aren't active, right? Like, this is when your fish plop their fat bellies in the mud and they sit there. Summer that's what our fish do all freaking winter. And I know because I used to sit and stare at them on a flasher while sitting on a 5-gallon bucket on the ice. You can catch largemouth in the winter that have mud on their stomachs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's for us. When they have mud on their stomachs, they're sitting there like slugs. You guys, when the water gets 88 to 90 degrees and stuff in the summer for you, that's when your fish sit down there like fat slugs, and they don't like to move around. Our water never gets above like 85 in the summer, and hardly, like, there might be some like ponds, but if there's a fishery, like, trout would instantly like die in our fisheries if the water got that warm. So for us, I would imagine, like, we haven't fished the mountainous lakes of like North Georgia and eastern North Carolina, but like, I'm sure those waters don't get super warm either, like up in the mountains there. Like, that's how it is here. And our fish are going to chase all summer long until like the middle of August, and then they start getting deeper, and you sometimes have to slow down. But I mean, really, our fish are willing to chase most of the summer because that's when their metabolism is right where a bass likes it.
And even so, we hear this in the South with the hot water temperatures, and you're catching your bigger fish at that 15 to 25 foot area typically, and that's because that's what's typically accessible for a moving bait, a deep crank. These fish are, sure, they're sluggish and that, but throwing that crankbait down deep like that and working it fast, you're creating a reaction bite. And even though those fish might not be willing to chase, if you're in the area of those fish, it's a reaction bite. So it's something's going by them fast. It's banging off the bottom, the rocks. The summertime is not necessarily the time to slow down. I think a lot of people catch fish slowing down because that bait's in the strike zone longer. But you could catch that same fish on a crankbait bite if you're getting it down to the depth that fish is at. But that's the biggest thing with a crankbait, especially when you're fishing deep. Man, you think about it. I fish out of a kayak. We don't necessarily get the length on a dredger or something that's diving below 15 feet on a crankbait. We might be missing that strike zone because of that distance. But then you throw a Carolina rig out there, you hit that strike zone because it comes down and it's in there. So it's not necessarily, sometimes in the summertime, it's not about slowing down. It's about being in the strike zone. And back to Ty's original question, he was asking about using fluorocarbon, mostly up north, with swim baits. And we talked about this on the last podcast, but touch on it now, because you fish your swim baits differently.
So
talk about that. That's interesting.
So with any of my soft baits that like would have a top hook, right? So let's see if I can put it on my neck where you guys see. If I was using a soft bait, like a Huddleston or a Defiant, I like the Defiant. If I'm using a top hook style bait, I actually run braid to fluoro. Anytime I'm using a hard bait, 9 out of 10 times I'm fishing straight fluoro. I like 28.9 pound Defiant soft cast. Oliver is a little different than me. I mean, and everybody probably knows he's, huge in the swim bait world. He does things a little different. He runs braid on 9 out of 10 applications. There are some smaller glides that I will run braid to fluoro on. I don't. It's more often I'm running big, heavy fluoro, like big stuff, like or like if I didn't have access, like if I was on a budget, I'd probably run 25-pound big game, like trilene big game. But I mean, being that I work with Defiant and I have access to, really good stuff for cheaper than your average consumer, like I throw the Defiant stuff. Like it's the best stuff I've found if you're going to step it up from big game and try to go with fluorocarbon for big baits.
That's interesting because you can go buy big game. You can buy 500-yard reels of big game at Walmart for like nothing. I don't know how much it costs.
You got to be careful though buying from Walmart. Like I would rather buy it from like Tackle Warehouse or something, and this is why. So I know this because when I was a kid, we used to buy paintballs from Walmart, right? And like right. So I used to play.
Paintballs are supposed to burst when they hit you, but the Walmart paintballs don't burst. They're full. It's like buckshot coming at you.
This is actually it's actually the opposite. So what used to happen, and we used to play like games. We're talking like 15 balls a second, like ripping, right? Speedball. Walmart does a lot of its ordering twice a year. Okay. So what happens is huge inventory sits in tractor trailers in Mobile, Alabama on this like campus that Walmart has that stores all of these like tractor trailer containers. And when they run out of diesel in the summer in Mobile, Alabama, it gets like 140 degrees inside these containers, right?
It's hot.
So paintballs used to warp, right? Line will do the same. It'll go bad under that extreme heat. So what I actually recommend to a lot of people is if you do buy line from Walmart, what you should do is open the package, tie an overhand knot in it, and see if you can break it. If you can break 20 or 25 pound big game like that, don't buy at all from that Walmart for a while.
Yeah.
Go to a different Walmart. That's why, like,
or just order the shit online. Like, prepare a little bit. Right now, Joe is telling y'all right now, is giving great information. Start preparing for what you need this summer or next year by buying it online from somewhere where the line is taken better care of.
Go to Omnia, go to anywhere that sells. I don't know. I haven't used Big Game in like 3 years, but go somewhere that sells it. I would assume TW has it.
And Serious Angler has an Omnia discount too. I'm not sure. Oh, not Siri. Hold on. My headphone might have quit working. It heard me say the not so. Look, if y'all have no idea how hard it is to be country with Siri. And I posted a reel on Instagram today for a little reaction video I did. And I put the closed captions up there on purpose, and it got about every other word wrong.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a good time for sure. So yeah, that's interesting. I like how you gave the budget side of it and being able to use mono. When you're using a mono, is it the same rod, power, or you have that stretch? So does that matter, right? If you're going to fish swim baits and you're going to pay $500 for a rod, and you're like, well, shit, I got to skimp on the damn line for this year before I can get some good stuff. Is that a big difference, or is it just you learning that specific rod, lure, line?
So, I mean, switching from mono to fluoro, I don't really think you have to change much. Just definitely don't go lighter mono. Like if you go to fluoro, you can go to lighter fluoro than what the mono was you're using to get a similar elasticity. But I mean, honestly, if I think now with rod technology and line technology, what has opened up, which we didn't have just 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, is now. So if you guys watch Not So Serious Angler, Bailey and Andrew talk about the equation, right? And the equation is hooks, line, rod, reels. Well, since rod technology and line technology has improved so drastically, now what it does is it opens up so your equation doesn't have to be so specific in order for the actions of your baits and the hooking ability and landing percentage of your baits. Everything doesn't have to be so specific anymore. As line technology and manufacture has improved and rod technology and manufacture has advanced, you now have the ability to use similar size baits or way opposite size baits with a similar rod or similar line. You don't have to change things as drastically. It's not like the specificity of trying to get the equation dialed in is not as important as it used to be when we're talking about swim baits. So it has like, and I'll tell you right now, you do not have to spend $500 on a rod to throw a big bait. Like, I mean, this one's huge. This is like an 11-inch bait. I think it weighs 7.5 ounces, but like there are a lot of good rod mate, like for somewhere, but depending on what your preferences are, I mean, you can spend $200 to $400 and get some of the best rods on the market. Now you have to shop for them. They're not always available. They're rarely available unless you know what you're looking for. But like if you're trying to get into swim baits and stuff, there's a lot, like, message some people like me or Big Bass Streams or Oliver, and we'll point you in the right direction. Like I can think of a couple of brands, and I don't want to plug like brands like overly because some people get turned off, but like actually I can think of a couple that are under $200 that you can buy. They're out there. So if you guys are interested in that equipment, message Oliver, message me, message BBD. We'll help put you in the, we'll help send you in the right direction for sure. I mean, we'll help you guys out. I mean, you have options that are not $400 anymore, $500. I mean, we'll help you guys out. I mean,
so the swim bait stuff, right? So we're talking swim baits. How does the forward-facing sonar play into this? I know you're using forward-facing, but take somebody that doesn't have it. They have side imaging, down imaging, 2D. How do they approach an area? Let's say they're an above average angler, and so they have areas, right? They know where these fish are, but they can't pinpoint them with the forward facing.
Okay.
Can they fish it without it and go into both? So talk about it from the forward facing side, but let's start off with it without having it. What does that look like?
All right. So first and foremost, number one most important tool is right here. So Lake Master and Navionics charts, most important tool you can own. I mean, and you can go, especially with Navionics charts, you can go to a lot of lakes all over the country. I don't know how many charts or how many lakes are charted on Navionics. It's a heck of a lot more than Lake Master. But number one tool. And you can have a John boat or fish from shore, or a kayak or a canoe. And if you're on a body of water, you don't even need a depth finder. Like, they're going to be pretty close. And you can fish really, really good with just that stuff, with a little bit of research and using your phone. You don't need all of the stuff that I have, but here's what it offers. So I run Mega 360 and forward-facing sonar. I'll tell you right now, though, if I'm going down a bank, my eyes are trained. My Lake Master chart first, my 360 second, my forward-facing sonar third. Like, my eyes are going through order of importance, right? But the whole time I'm making casts, I'm looking, I'm checking, I'm following these things. And like, my eyes have gotten really good that like I can read contour lines on my Mega 360. I don't have to look at the map as much to see those contour lines on a map. Like, I can see that. I can see depth changes on Mega 360 because I'm used to the color changes, and I've been staring at it for, I had the original 360, I think, for 2 years, and this is my third year on Mega. So, I mean, I've been reading 360 for half a decade, and my eyes are really trained. Really, the like math in my head is just translating it back into a topographic map anyway. And that's what's helping me target these fish. Now, the huge advantage that you get with 360 is now you're seeing those structural and cover changes. So structural is the contour lines. Cover is trees, boulders, grass, like things that cover up fish, so that you can more accurately target cover structure. And then forward-facing sonar allows me to see responses, because I'm not targeting fish with forward-facing sonar. I'm targeting structure and cover with 360. Forward-facing sonar is giving me the feedback to help me understand how these fish are responding to my baits. And like, people want to talk about like Patrick Walters winning at Lake Fork, right? When he was winning with that jerk bait, he had his face buried in his electronics. Well, like, most of the time, he's not actually watching his bait come back to the boat. What he's watching is he's watching those fish that he is targeting. He knows where his bait is. He knows how to point his forward-facing sonar at these fish to watch to see if fish are responding and there's any action where he knows his bait is. Because it's really, really hard to stay on a jerk bait that's going like this, and keep it in a cone angle, right? Point your cone angle in the general direction of a jerk bait or a swim bait. I mean, it's really easy with the A-rig, and it's easy with a swim bait too, but you start getting down to like a jerk bait or like a little like 4-inch swim bait, and like, it's hard to watch that thing swim all the way back to the boat. So what you're looking for is that blob to start following your bait in, and you're looking for behavioral responses in fish. And the more times you see a fish respond, the better you get at reading their language and their behavior, and that helps you dial in that bite even better.
So I'm going to interrupt you right here, because I do not have it. I have not used it. I listen to a lot of folks talk about it, podcast and whatever, YouTube. This what you just said for the last, I don't know, minute and a half or so. There's 5 people listening. I hope they recorded that shit. And I hope somebody goes back and listens to this, because that's exactly the point about the forward facing. I think that that people don't get yet. even though the pros talk about it, and not just professional anglers on elites and MLF and that, but the guys, the folks that catch fish off of it, they talk about it's about looking at the fish to see how they respond when you see them. And so they're able to, hey, these fish aren't ready yet. This is a waste of time.
Yeah.
I need to move on and go to another one. Or maybe I need to change my presentation. It's that fish behavior. And I'll say this, I hadn't referenced it a lot, and I can't remember who the hell it was, but somebody talked about every time I mentioned spoon plugging and Buck Perry and spoon plugging, who's the father of offshore fishing. You know, he talks about fish behavior and fish movement. Forward-facing sonar has given us an insight into how fish behave that we haven't had before. And so the folks that are able to really dial that in and to see how those fish are behaving, and I think Bailey's talked about it, and quite a few other people have talked about it on their podcast. It's about, are these, am I wasting my time here? That's the biggest thing. It's a way to cut down on dead fishing time. Maybe I need to come back later and go to these fish. But that fish behavior, I mean, you took that minute and a half, what you just described, is about as golden of shit we've ever had on Bass and Brews podcast.
Well, thanks, Paul. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, 100% like a student of this game. I mean, I remember when forward-facing sonar came out in 2013. You saw on social media, right? Fred Rambanis and some of these other guys who had it right off the jump posting their jerkbaits and stuff coming back. And it was cool to see that on social media, but it gave the public who hoped to one day acquire such technology for their fishing addictions, it gave us a false perception that we're 9 years later still battling.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, here, and this is a bit of a sidetrack Harvey rant, but I feel it very important to share as much knowledge as possible with everybody. Like, I'm not going to hold anything back, hardly ever. I'm not wired to, like, you get me chatting and I'm not going to stop. Like, it happens.
Look, Joe Labarbera, if you're talking about boobs or bassing, he's going to talk. I mean, we've already cut this. These are facts. Facts.
Yeah.
I mean, there is video and audio evidence that if it ain't boobs or bass, I'm not interested. Quote unquote. Joe Labarbera.
Yeah.
Probably my most favorite quote from all of Bass and Brews is that shit right there. I love it. That it gets me all tingling inside. Makes me feel like I'm drunk wood making some kind of wood statue or something.
I was on a rant that day, buddy. Like, but it's
go ahead.
Nah, that's all good. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I just can't hold back. Like, I feel it's my job to be an ambassador, and part of that means, like, if I feel like we've been given or like misled as a consumer, which I still am, just because I have some companies that work very closely with me. I'm still a consumer. Like, I still spend more money on tackle each year than freaking a lot of people. Like, I'm still a consumer, and I want to get the right information out there. Mm-hmm. It's my job to be an ambassador of this sport, and I'm not going to let people think they're buying one thing or that a tool is meant to be used one way if that's not what it's for. So I got to tell you guys.
Yeah, and you're good with that. Like, you don't just fish the products that you sponsor or that you like. I mean, you fish everything. You give the information out. You've been I can't say Siri sing because my Siri thinks I'm talking to her. But anyway, there you go. And you're very open with that. You do try a lot of stuff, and I don't think that does give a lot of credence to what you say because you're giving that information. Now, this goes back into the point that I made a note of earlier. I was listening to Ben Milliken talk about fishing, and I might fuck this up because it's been a couple weeks and I can't remember shit real good. But he talked about his let's preface this. He's targeting world-class fish, right? That's what he's targeting. He's not out there trying to win he's not tournament fishing this. He's catching 2 or 3 fish a day that are over 10 pounds. But he talked about using forward-facing sonar and how those fish react, and that it's usually a small swim bait, which you've talked about before, those smaller ones, or it's a jerk bait. And then this is a stray cast podcast. Y'all go listen to it. It's long, but it's really good. He's talking about his stuff. They brought up, why wouldn't you use a plug, a crankbait? He said, well, they aren't going to bite a crankbait because these fish that he's targeting, that bait is not in front of them long enough. Yeah. So coming off of the tournament side of it and into that swim bait and that jerk bait and the forward facing sonar, are you seeing that kind of stuff? Like, is that something that how do you relate that? What are you seeing with that fish behavior?
Well, okay, with so let me first say this. So Ben's a big Garmin guy. For any of you guys that don't know, forward-facing sonar, like Ben uses, and Ben doesn't use 360. So, I mean, Ben is very dialed in to his Garmin units, and the reason Ben knows what he knows is because he's observed it so many freaking times. So all he's doing. So here's the thing. Watching fish behave on forward-facing sonar is like and learning and studying it is kind of like going through your teenage years, right? You learn. So let's be Joe. So hold on, middle school guy. All right, here we go though.
Hold on. Before you get what Joe means when you're in your teenage years as a guy is you're gonna fuck up a lot. That's what he's saying. You're gonna fuck up a lot, but you're gonna have some really good learning experiences. So when you're 40 years old, you're like, you know what? I know what this means, right? I see something. I'm like, I know what this means, and it's not what I thought 20 years ago.
Right. I've seen that look before, So, and that's what I'm saying. You get used to staring at these images, right? Just like I said before, I've been staring at 360 for so many years. Like now I know what certain shadows and stuff look like. And you start getting used to the same thing when you've had enough fish come out and look at your baits, right? You're sight fishing with your electronics in real time, and you start noticing how they close distances, how they respond to certain cadences, whether it's cadences with the big bait or cadences cranking down. And it's like a middle schooler who starts to learn girls' body language for the first time, and they're like hair flip and their looks, and you'll have that learning curve, just like a prepubescent Joe Labarbera had a learning curve, and then you'll begin to become a seasoned, weathered individual who is progressing through college and through his 20s and into his 30s, to where you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that shoulder shrug before. Like I've seen those eyes. Like I know what's up, right? So you'll get used to that with time using these, and you'll know how to respond. Wow, that was a fun freaking analogy to go into, Paul.
Dude, my God. Look, that was a great exact. I was about to say the same exact thing, and yes, it was great. But it's all about being relatable. Like, how do you take fishing and real life experiences and put them together? Because you think about fishing, there's a lot of factors in fishing that come together with catching fish. And good anglers can catch fish because they can make that analogy. Great anglers find those little signs, those little winks, those little shoulder shrugs. They find those throughout a fishing tournament, and then they dial it in. I mean, that's the difference in a good angler and a professional, and that difference is miles apart.
Yeah.
Like being able to understand those small little signs. Oh shit, they just bit this crankbait. This fish bit this crankbait this way. You know, it got the back hook. A damn professional angler is like, shit, I need to put the crankbait down and throw a drop shot or something like that. You know, there's intricacies and those little minute details is what changes.
And this is the thing too, is the difference. We talk about it a lot, like me and my buddies that, you know, on Big Bass Streams and the other guys that I know that travel and fish the opens together. Generally, the difference between the guys who finish in the top 10 in the opens and the guys that finish in the bottom 225 or 215, whatever's left. The difference usually is the ability to not only read these extremely minute differences, but react to them immediately like it's second nature. Because the difference between hero and zero at this level is, I mean, it's so paper thin, but if you've hesitated, you're dead. Like, you're behind. You're not getting to the next level. And that's the difference between guys that fish the Elite Series and guys that kick ass at home. Is Elite Series guys no matter where in North America they recognize a certain set of circumstances and respond immediately. Polinick talks about following his limbic brain, like having a thought and immediately like second nature response upon that thought. And he's trained himself over the years to understand what appropriate responses are and what appropriate responses aren't. And he's literally going through the motions at the highest possible level. And that's what's happening, because the differences are this much, and they're split second differences and split second decisions that need to be made. And that's really what the difference between guys who do this for a living, and just like guys like me who aspire to do it 365 days, you know, like, I mean, Brandon is making decisions in real time that are so freaking dialed. It's unbelievable. And every day that he continues to get on the water, he separates himself farther and farther from average Joes. No pun intended. So like, all of us are going to be playing catch up. I mean, forever.
And all right, this is a good transition, because we go from a lure, a technique, and we're going to take it now into that mindset, that mentality, and of what you just talked about. They see things that we don't see. And a correlation that you hear a lot is, oh man, this guy right here, this local angler, this guy on my lake that fishes this one lake or these 2 or 3 lakes, man, if he just had the time and the money, he can compete with everybody because he fishes a good lake. He fishes, he's the master at that local lake. These guys aren't a master. Like, they're going to a bunch of different lakes, and you think about the professional level, and you think they've been to Lake Fork for the elites 4 times in the last, I don't know how many ever years, 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been. Dude, like, people don't understand that these folks, when they come to your lake, they are the best angler on your fucking lake. I don't know, 80% of the time. Sure, could a local angler beat them? Sure. But could they beat them on Saturday and then load their boat up and go to a unknown lake and give them 1 day of practice? Who's going to win? I would say majority of the time it's going to be the professional angler, because they can break down lakes. They see stuff other people don't see. And we take this back to the professional sports, right? Football, basketball, baseball. Those people that play those sports, you take the greatest player on a college football team and you put him in the NFL, he's going to last 3 years, because there's a whole different mentality into how they come in and play that sport. It's the same thing with bass fishing. I would say it's even more of bass fishing, because you don't have an athletic edge in bass fishing. I mean, there's just so much that comes into how you prepare and how you are mentally. And how you talk about Paul, he can see shit and he can throw it out. Oh man, do I make this cast? Do I make this do I make one more cast, or do I pull my shit up and go somewhere else? That's the difference in 5 pounds sometimes.
Okay, so I'll say this. The reason that I agree with what you just said is because 99% of the time, a lot of tournaments that aren't 1 day shootouts, once you get past the BFL level, these tournaments aren't won on a spot, right? How many tournaments have you guys ever heard of? Somebody won it this spot, right? You go back and watch all FLW, Bass Top 150, Bass Top 100, Bassmaster Elite Series. You start watching a lot of these tournaments, these multi-day events. These guys aren't winning it off of a spot. They're winning off of decisions. So to compete at the highest level, what you have to be good at. It's why I don't, and this rewinds us an hour and 28 minutes to the first thing we talked about today, is I don't fish certain places and certain times of the year that aren't going to benefit me, right? Like river fishing,
because it doesn't matter.
Smallmouth isn't going to have to be something I need to be trained in, right? This isn't affecting this is what I do for fun and to get content for my sponsors. Like going to catch it, betting smallies, it is literally what I take my friends out to do, because it's a time of the year I'm not as busy. It's like what I take chicks out to do that I want to impress. Like it's something we just go do because catching is plentiful, but it doesn't, other than that, like in terms of training, like I'm freaking working, man. Like I am training to try to compete at the highest level. Like, because I just go out and do it to blow off steam. My goal is to fish
in the elite.
I want to fish. I want to be angler of the year in the qualifying events, and I want to go on to fish the Elite Series. Like, it's like that. That's just what I do for fun. Like, I'm not interested in cashing $2,500 at home because I beat 40 other boats on a home body of water on opening day. Like, I'm never going to fish a tournament like that I have the opportunity to win 6 figures. So, like, what the hell's the point? That's just for me. Like, for me, there is no point.
You fish to win, right? But what you want to win isn't the same as, let's say, me. I fish to win. I fish local kayak tournaments because that's what I fish, and I fish to win those. My goal is to win that local kayak tournament. Yours is to fish to win, to be a professional at that highest level. And so that's a whole different mindset, because I'm fishing local lakes. I'm not traveling all over the country. But you, on the other hand, have to prepare your mind and body to fish a lake that maybe you've never been to, or fish a lake that you've been to once.
Yeah, and like when I go practice somewhere that I've been to 1 or 2 or 3 times, like, like it might be 20 miles before I get to the next spot that's like the one I was just at. And like when I zoom in and out of my maps, like I'm looking for specific stuff and stuff that rings off of my past experience, whether it be on that body of water or a different body of water. But like all of the information that I'm gaining is very cumulative and will apply itself. I will apply it at some point. And like, don't get me wrong, I have tons and tons of respect for the best angler on Lake Havasu and the best angler on, like whatever body of water is your local body of water, Lake Fork, Okeechobee, like I have tons of respect for these local hammers. It's just not my path. Like, I don't ever want to be the king of Cayuga, the king of Oneida. I don't have any desire to be it. What I want to be is I want to be a touring professional, because I believe that if I can live to age 60 and living the lifestyle I'm living right now, I'll be pushing it. Like probably due for a stroke soon. But
hey man, this Bass and Brews, you can smoke a cig, or you can be like OG Scoop. You could be like OG Scuba Steve and eat popcorn and potato chips on a podcast like an unprofessional asshole. I love that tall, lanky bastard, by the way. But yeah,
I mean, I'm not trying. I want to learn as much as I can, and to me, that's what makes bass fishing so exciting. Some people might say what makes bass fishing so exciting to them is they think sometimes the fish should be in one place on their home body of water, maybe one of 2 bodies of water they ever fish. And when they think they know they're there, all of a sudden that's the day they're not. That might be what turns somebody else on. What turns me on is running my bass boat 73 miles an hour all over a lake, trying to figure out this huge body of water that I barely know anything about, and trying to draw from all of my past experiences to try to figure out that body of water on that day. And we just have different goals, and that is what it is.
So if you need to go take a break, go take it real quick. I got a couple things I'll plug. You good? Whatever, because I got another question for you. All right. So, all right. Well, if you're good, my next question is this. We've talked about the mindset of it. We've talked about the swim baits. That's what you're good at. That's what you like to do. How does diversity play into the professional angling? Like, you want to throw swim baits, but can you tie on a Carolina rig? Can you go drop shot? And I say this because you're doing that. Tons of guys in the professional level, folks making a living off of this, fishing at the highest level. How does being able to come out of what you like to do and want to do into doing something that's going to catch you fish? Are you good at that? Like, how does that play into being that professional?
So I started fishing at a really, really, really young age. And I grew up on the Susquehanna River, which is like
Smallmouth heaven.
Yeah, it's smallmouth heaven. But the other thing too is like I also grew up with a father that loved to go troll for trout and salmon a lot. So like I grew up fishing very diverse amount of species, diverse fishing in diverse fisheries. The Northeast offers that. We have pros like Paul Mueller. Hunter Shryock, Destin DeMarion. Garrett Paquette is from Michigan, but I include Michigan and Northern Anglers. Kevin Van Dam's from Kalamazoo, Michigan. There's a lot of good, solid anglers that come out of the Northeast, and that's because our bodies of water are so diverse. So it gives me the opportunity. We only get to really have great fishing conditions for 6 months out of the year. It gives you the opportunity to fish in a lot of different ways. I mean, I have no trouble moving from 30 feet of visibility to 30 centimeters of visibility. Like I've fished a lot of different conditions. And I mean, like when we went down to the James to fish the first open of the year, I only got to practice for about 14 hours before I fished a tournament that was an $1,800 entry fee.
Yeah. Damn.
And I finished like low 90s, mid 90s out of 225 guys doing something that you don't do in clear water conditions. Like I was flipping quarter ounce like beaver style bait on a 6'11" medium heavy braid to fluorocarbon leader. I was using 40-pound braid to 28.9 pound Defiant leader. And I was throwing a spinner bug. So, I mean, those are the two things I did the whole time. And dude, I didn't flip until I was like 24 years old. Like everywhere we went, we'd chase water that you could chase this, like a double willow leaf blade spinnerbait bite or a jerkbait bite or cranking. Like it wasn't until like I really got older did I really start like flipping. And I used to like swim a worm a lot on a Charlie Brewer slider head when I was like, 10 and 12 years old. Like, I don't know the way, like I have ADHD to the max, right? And it's really easy for me to connect all of the things that I have done to like the next technique. And like, I don't really think I have a lot of weaknesses in fishing because I don't really have a go-to. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really feel like there's anything that I haven't done because I don't know, like I see similarities in the steelhead fishing that I do to like fishing certain techniques in rivers for smallies. And I see like connections between doing this for largemouth and clear water and this for largemouth and I don't know. I just like, I feel like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind sometimes. Like, I just like, I don't know. I don't feel like there's a lot of things that I haven't done. There's a few techniques I like, but like, if you ask me again in 2 years, if that's my favorite, I'm going to probably say something totally different. I go through these cycles where I'm really just on whatever, like I'm on at that time. It's all a learning process. And I mean, and I think that's how some of the best anglers in the world are right now. Like Justin Lucas, Jacob Wheeler, Brandon Polinick, and Chris Aldane. And I don't believe these guys are truly specialists of anything. And that's kind of the angler that I am as well. You don't see the jig fisherman, the crankbait guy. You don't see those specialists really like killing it anymore,
Yeah, and I would say that, and I can't remember what it was. I was listening to a podcast last week or a week before, and they talk about how there really aren't specialists in these professional levels anymore. Like the guys know how to fish. They know how to fish a presentation and a lure to catch the fish that they're fishing for. And so, I think the diversity side of it is a big thing that comes into your local anglers where, you gotta be diversified. You gotta know how to, well, look, you're not, if you're not doing that shit day in and day out, you're going to be good at one or two things. and it's there. It to me, there's one simple thing it comes down to 99% of anglers, and this is selling lures. So when it comes down to it, people can be diversified, but they're, I don't know, that's a whole. It's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard to
I could go
down.
I could go down that rabbit hole with you.
Yeah.
What happens if I start going down the sales rabbit holes? I start talking shit, and that's something I'd rather do with a circle of buddies than on a show. You know what I mean? Because not shit talking. It'll come off. I should say this. It'll come off as shit talking, and it's not. Like, I have to sell stuff too. I just do it in a different way. But it'll come off as, it'll sound like I'm talking shit, and I'm not. And that's just because I have a different understanding of the industry as some other people. And I don't know, I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole. I do like this question that's up there, though.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we'll get the question, but I'm going to say this. This is Bass and Brews, and Bass and Brews is built upon us sitting around a campfire, drinking our favorite beverage, alcoholic or not, talking shit and talking fishing. But yeah,
I'm not a shit talker on purpose.
No, but it's not shit talking though. But the tackle industry is based off of selling tackle. That's the whole thing for it. Like, somebody wins a tournament on this lure, and everybody goes and buys it, regardless if that lure is even remotely close to something that they should fish in their body of water, or that they didn't even know how to fish. But you're right. That's a different one. We will do another impromptu Bass and Brews with Joe where we dive into the sales of lures, because I'm not a gearhead. I'm not a color guy. 99% of the time, 99, not all of it, but 99, you could throw a fucking hook with a piece of bubble gum on it and catch the same damn fish. That we could go there. But yes, let's get to this question from Mike's Out Fishing. Take it away, Joe.
All right. So Mike says structures, points, docks, and so on are found on any lake. Well, what would you say are factors when fishing a new lake to make it different? What I really look for is water clarity and forage. I mean, other than different times of the year. Water clarity, forage, max depth, and average depth. And I'll tie max depth and average depth in with forage because it's really relevant to where I live. So Oneida's max depth is 44 feet. 22-mile long lake, max depth 44 feet. It averages like 22, 24. And its forage is mainly perch for now. There's a lot of crawdads. There's getting more gobies in it. But water clarity, when I am there, and forage matter exactly how I'm going to start fishing, right? Because if fish are chasing perch and water clarity is bad, I can fish fast. Perch tend to be a nomadic bait species like a herring. And like a spotted bass, smallmouth bass will follow them wherever in the lake they are. Those things matter to me. So clarity depends on what baits I get to use, and the forage species and where that forage species is probably matter with your max and average depth of that body of water. So again, the Google machine is my favorite, application when I look at a new body of water. Those things are huge to me. Proper research. I'll tell you right now. So before I went to the James this year, it was April 14th, I think was the first day of the tournament. I've been watching the weather for weeks and weeks, and I've only been to the James twice before this. And I knew about a month before Oliver and I scheduled a thing, like an expo the weekend before. I knew I wasn't going to get there until Monday night at midnight, Tuesday morning at midnight. So I knew I was only going to get to practice like 10 or 12 hours on Tuesday, and then about 3 on Wednesday, because we have to be off the water pretty early. So, you know, I'd been watching the weather all winter. I kind of knew from the previous year when we were there 3 weeks later what to look out for, what kind of spring we were having. It all mattered, and like a lot of it just is me kind of drawing from past experience, and I have very limited past experience on that place, but you know, I just kind of like generally know what I'm gonna look for, and I don't necessarily try to win every tournament either. Like that one, I'd been buying baits, and I'd
Joe,
been, you know,
we
like
don't hold
prepping.
on. Time out. I'm gonna interrupt you. No, we only fish tournaments. We go into a tournament to fish it to fucking win. And if we're in the money or where we want to place, then that's
Here's the
good.
thing.
Bo,
Here's the
we
thing.
fish to win, Joe. At Bass and Brews, we fish to fucking win.
Well, okay, so like my winning though is finishing in the top 20 out of all 3. And part of winning for me is don't lose it before you get to all 3 events. Because so like
that's, yes, I understand it. But
depends on what winning is to you though. And that's what's important to understand is like winning to me in this first one is not losing. And because I need to finish in the top 20 overall for the year.
Right.
I can't lose it at the first one and be screwed. Like my co-host on Big Bass Dreams finished 176th. He can't finish in the top 20 now. He could win the next 2. He's out.
Yeah. So in country language, he fucked.
Yeah, and like I believe, Oneida is the second one. I've been calling it home. This is the 5th season now. Like, you know, I'll have like 3 weeks of practice there. You know, like I won't go out on the most miserable days, because what's the point? Like I'll go out to eat. Like I'll catch up on content, like editing videos and stuff. Like, you know, like I'll be comfortable. I'll be prepared for that event. The Chesapeake Bay is the 3rd one, and depending on how I do at Oneida will depend on how I plan for that event. Like, so winning to me is finishing in the top 20 overall for a season. Like I did win for what I was trying to do at the James, and my only goal was don't lose. Like don't lose, because I have a plan through the course of the following years. And the reason I have to be in the top 20 is because I need priority registration for next year, so that if they don't change the qualifying standards, which I heard yesterday they may, that way being in the top 20, I get to register a week before everybody else. That way I know I can fish all 9 to try to qualify next year. So, I mean,
that's the
I'm not trying to win.
Yeah. But
I'm not trying to win the Derby.
Yeah. The mentality, though, is the way that I look at it is that if my mentality is I'm going to go win, then if I finish second, even though I didn't win, I did okay.
Are you okay finishing dead fucking last, though?
But you know what? For me, yes.
Against who? Okay.
But that's
to me in that specific tournament, I'm not okay with it, because not only did I lose, I also lost the entire season. My whole season is over.
Okay. So let's take one guy, you know.
Like I just lost an entire year. 225th.
You didn't lose that time in a year. You lost the money in a year, and that's huge, right?
No, I lost 365 days also.
I get you.
I can't, because I don't move forward. If I don't finish in the top 20, I don't get into all 9 next year. And if I don't get into all 9, that because the Southern sold out in 66 seconds this year,
then you lose that opportunity.
So I just lost 365 days on that choice. So like I went out, I made a plan to go out there and take care of business so that I can win the next one. Because there's no point in fishing the next two or even competing for the next 365 days. I finish outside the top 100 in the first one.
And this all relates back to the mentality and the strategy of fishing, because fishing
we all
is
have different
so
goals.
yeah. Well, there's so many factors in the fishing. The weather is this on Friday on day one. The weather's this on day two. The weather's this, in day 3 and 4, Saturday, Sunday, on the July 4th weekend, and there's 85,000 drunk people on boats out there fucking shit up. Let's get to this question right here. Anthony says, talk to me on clarity. How do you approach bait size, color, presentation in accordance with the clarity of water? And we talked about this because I asked you this question specifically for like glide baits and the big swim baits. But let's take this question in general, unless Anthony, you can, if you have a specific technique or lure on this. But until he does, take this away here, Joe.
All right. So, I mean, if you're watching the weather leading up to a tournament, or even leading up to you arriving at a new destination to fish, you pretty much know if it's blowing 20 for a week, when you get there and it's muddy, it's muddier than it usually is.
All right.
Muddier than it usually is usually means I'm going to fish bigger baits that give off more cues, you know, and I'm going to try to draw those fish to my baits a little bit more. But I mean, if I go to Oneida in the middle of the summer and I look down and I can see the bottom in 12 feet, no problem, I'm probably moving out to where I can't see the bottom anymore, because those fish aren't going to put themselves in a position where some type of prey item has fair go at them, right? I mean, I want to be somewhere usually where I can't see the bottom, unless I'm fishing a specific cover like docks or anything. And I don't fish docks. Like I'm fishing I don't like to be able to see shore if possible. Like that's for me. But you know, like I don't want to see the bottom, because the fish can't really hide as good. So, but if I can't see the bottom, barely see into the water, I mean, it just means bigger baits that give off more positive cues, or you know, like more cues. So like, I don't know, like the biggest thing I can tell you guys, like, I don't overthink anything. Like if it's friggin' dirty, I'm gonna probably throw a chatterbait, spinnerbait, or a crankbait.
Right.
Like I'm gonna start where you guys start, and I'm just gonna kind of evaluate as I go. I think the biggest difference between me and you guys is, like, if something's not working, I have a lot of experience to say, I'm going to lean on this past experience to make a change, you know, and I probably make a change a lot quicker than a lot of people.
So
and it's just based on hours of fishing.
You quit fast.
I change fast. Change fast for sure.
Semantics.
Yeah. Change fast.
Yeah, and so I guess that goes back to what we were talking about with those guys that are the top of the game. Is they're like, this shit ain't working. I got to go do this, or I got to go to this other area because shit ain't working.
Yeah. I mean, like, I mean, here's the thing: is like, I know I'm never gonna go to Virginia and catch them in more than 12 feet of water. I mean, when I'm at the James River, which is a tidal fishery, we're talking on the clearest day, you still can't see 2 feet. I've never seen 2 feet of visibility there, not even at the dam, like, which should be the cleanest. And so that being said, like, I know I can never see 2 feet. I could throw the biggest crankbait on the planet, like a 4.0 square bill, 8.0 square bill even. those fish aren't going to even know what's there in more than 12 feet of water, So, like, you can't catch fish that don't know your baits are there. So, like, I'm going to start to target areas that are, I believe I have the highest percentage chance to catch them based on some past experience. So, yeah, I mean, water clarity dictates a good bit for me in terms of starting point and what my first curveball is going to be when I change it up,
Does water clarity is going to dictate where you start shallow versus deep?
Yeah. It's like in
All right.
the summertime, your standard summertime fishing for sure.
All right. So Mike goes, so if visibility is low, do they come into the shallows?
More, yeah. I mean, like, so relatively shallow can be a lot shallower in a low vis lake than relatively shallow might be in a high visibility situation, like Champlain, for instance, Cayuga, for instance. If you're fishing around not a lot of vegetation, not a lot of cover like docks, relatively shallow is going to be shallower and dirty water. Whereas it might be 10, 12 feet in New York, might be relatively shallow for summer fishing. Like when smallies get shallow on the Thousand Islands, like 6-8 feet can be shallow for a lot of like Lake Ontario, Thousand Islands scenarios. Like that's shallow because I mean normally you got 30 feet of viz, so like visibility is a big deal. Like water clarity is a big deal. It's what makes things relative in a lot of situations.
And so I'm going to take things a little bit off on a sidetrack here because I want to be greedy a little bit since I got you here. And we talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, and I'm hoping to get it. But the mag rebound, do you need a Red Bull refill?
Nah, come on,
Okay.
It's 11:30 here.
oh man, that's like 8:30 in regular time. I mean, I'm good with that.
Yeah, right.
But so I want to go to the alpha angler rods, the mag rebound and the rebound for crankbait fishing because I love that. That's what I like to do. I'm going to get me a mag rebound, and we did talk about this, but like explain for folks that are looking to get into crank in deep cranking. Deep cranking is something that I think a lot of people aren't they won't commit to because of the size of the lures, because of positioning, because of everything that goes into it. But like, how do these rods, like when you're going into deep cranking, and I say in my definition of deep is 10 and deeper, right? You're throwing something with a big bill. You're going to need to have give. You're going to need to have good positioning. You're throwing at a target. It needs to be precise. You need to know how far I got to cast to get that crankbait down to where I think the fish are in that strike zone to bring it back. So, like, I want to know why these alpha angler rods, that we've talked about a lot off air texting, like how do they help you with that? What is the selling point, or what is the thing about those rods that make them what they are?
Well, I mean, so in terms of like, we do something really special when it comes to the rods that we use. But let's not start there. Let's start with like the king of cranking, right? So if we go back to Paul Elias and the Neil and Reel, or we go back to, it's not Larry Nixon, who works for Berkeley now, that David Fritz, right? So we go back to Fritz time.
We're talking
Fiberglass
about
rods.
mid to late 90s.
Yeah. So fiberglass rods
Mm.
were really designed so that when a fish comes and eats a treble hooked style hard bait, that rod bows to the fish, right? Or if you're fishing a treble hooked hard bait and it kicks off of a stump, you want that rod to give to allow that crankbait to even like hold up for a split sec, and it'll allow it to deflect around because the rod kind of like starts to give when that bait runs into it, and then it can pop off instead of drive in, and there be no stretch in your equation that we talked about earlier, and drive the hooks into it, right? It allows it to hit, kind of absorb as your rod absorbs some of the shock, and then it'll shoot off of there, right? Fiberglass rods were designed for bait presentation and to give you a better hookup ratio with the fish and a higher landing percentage. So what we did, Brandon was around. I wasn't around when a lot of this happened, but a lot of our rod blanks for Alpha Angler are designed by the son of Gary Loomis. Brad designs a lot of our blanks, and Brad found a structural grade fiberglass material that's like 30 or 40% of the weight of your standard fiberglass material. And it also has a lot higher tensile strength. Like, the thing that most people hate about a fiberglass rod is when you go to cast it, it doesn't even want to like return to straight fast enough. Like it's like bleh, coming around when you go to like whip it. So a lot of people like a graphite rod because it casts more accurately because you load it up and then it will return to straight really quickly. Well, structural grade S2 glass returns to straight and returns to its original properties very, very quickly. But it still has the elasticity that most fiberglass, whether it's E-glass, like every other company on the planet uses, or whether it's S-glass, it still will give under a load. S-glass just straightens much faster when load is taken off of it. That it's a lot lighter too. It also makes it a lot more sensitive. So all of these things combine to produce a rod that does its job for this specific application that we're discussing better than any other rod previously. And it's just strictly based on the components that we build these rods with. And Brad doesn't make these blanks for any of the other companies that he builds blanks for. So, you know, we have by far the two best cranking rods on the planet. We're lucky.
What
we
rods
really are.
What rods are those? What rods are the two best?
No, I mean, like, I was talking about the Rebound and the Mag Rebound.
Yeah. Well, just for people that might have missed it, naming the rods that you have.
Yeah. So like, the Rebound and the Mag Rebound are those cranking applications that I was talking about from Alpha Angler. So the Mag is just a 7.6 medium heavy, whereas the regular Rebound is a 7-foot heavy. I can tell you right now, the rods fish like they're a lot longer. We're able to make them shorter based on we make our rods with perfect balance. And that means if we're using an application where you want the rod tip up, it's always going to be balanced rod tip up so that you're not like fighting to keep that rod tip up. Like our rods are always, it's something we really hugely strive for, is to balance our rods perfect. It makes them feel a lot lighter overall. And they fish like a much longer rod, because since they are balanced so good and we place the guides so perfectly, they cast farther, they give you more leverage. Like everything just fishes like a rod of a different length based on the fact that it really truly is like cut and and calculated to be perfect in terms of all of its dimensions. And there'll be times all the time where I know I'm fishing a 7-footer, it feels like a 7.4. There'll be times where like I go to flip under a bush and I'm fishing a 7.3 and it feels like or if I'm skipping under docks where it feels like I'm using a 6.11, but I'm actually using a 7.3, because since they are balanced perfect, they feel like what they should be based on your application. So if you ever do order from us, don't get hung up on the fact that it's like 3 inches longer or 3 inches shorter than you're used to. Like, don't get hung up on those silly numbers on a sticker. Don't get hung up on weight ratings. Like, be smarter than the sticker. Because none of that crap matters.
We're diving into the selling of product again. And so I ask you this in our conversations. I fish out of a kayak mainly. And so you're throwing crankbaits that aren't shallow is hard in a kayak. I mean, even with spot lock, you're still dealing with that pull and tug and getting the bait down into the strike zone.
There's a lot of resistance there.
Yeah, but for anybody crankbaiting, kayak or not, it's all about casting. I think a lot of people overlook the importance of the accuracy and how long you cast that crankbait, because how you position your boat and how you cast, and this goes back to another thing with professional anglers, they can position their boat knowing that they're going to make the same cast every single time to get that crankbait to where the fish are. The rest of us, it's that casting side of it. You got to be able to be accurate with it, and then you got to know how long you can make it. And so a rod that casts well, to me, is more important than what I feel on the bottom. Because you can learn how to feel on the bottom, but if I can't cast that thing far enough away to get that crankbait down, then I'm at a disadvantage. I'm going to miss a lot of those fish. And
100%.
that was one of the things that we've talked about that really got me excited about this rod. Was you talked about the castability of it. And I like that, because I have to, I'm not an accurate caster at all. I'm a sling that motherfucker out there. I don't accurate cast worth a shit. I don't flip worth a damn.
Bandy hammer. High over distance.
Look, I don't care what I want to get as far away from the bank as I can to make a long ass cast and work it. And that's just how it's not accurate, but that's how I am. But again, it comes to that cranking. I want to make those long casts, in any rod that gets me another, 5 yards or 10 yards. Like, to me, that's important to me. And the feeling of it is something I can learn over time with that rod. You can start to understand the bottom composition and how that bait's running off of it if you use the same lures, the same rod, the same line. You can learn all that stuff. But I got to be able to get it out there to get into strike zone.
Yeah, and I mean, like what a lot of people would say who are trying to be like real coy are like, well, wouldn't it be great to have the best of all those worlds? I mean, and I believe that we do, but here's the biggest thing, right? Is you are going to get more sensitivity and more feel out of a rod that's just balanced right anyway. So like, hey, if you have a rod that you can launch, now you've reached what you really want. And even if you aren't using the best materials on the planet, even if you aren't, using all of the greatest components on a rod that you can put on it, reel, seat, handle, guides, if your rod is still balanced right, you're going to get a lot of feedback from your line. Even if you're throwing monofilament and you're not throwing the highest end fluorocarbon you can get, if the rod's balanced right, you're going to get a lot of feedback. You're not fighting the rod tip or the system isn't absorbing a lot of that vibration and tactile feedback that you're getting through your fingertips, through your hand. So like when you have a rod that's balanced right, and a lot of people think you have to like balance the rod in front of the reel, and like that's not what I'm talking about. Like rod balance is when you stick the rod out and it sits and you don't feel like you're fighting it. Or if you're fishing like a tight, like if you're fishing the slasher, which is our jerkbait rod, and it sits down low, but you don't have to fight it to get it up. Like you can sit there and like twitch it without feeling like you feel like you're fighting the rod when it sits in the position that it's supposed to. And again, that does, everybody wants to like put their finger on a rod and like see if it'll like bounce. Like that's not, oh my God, like stop watching other people. But like balanced right, it means it sits in your hands and you're not fighting it forwards or backwards based on where that rod is supposed to lay for that fishing technique. When it does that, you're gonna always feel way more. So like stop reading the labels. Stop like thinking like this is an exact science that you can pinpoint. Stop trying to be so smart. Put the rod in your hand and just close your eyes and feel it. And that's when that rod's going to be working the best for you. And, you know, we've spent so many hundreds of hours testing all of these models, and we still retest them all the time as new reels, new line, new baits come out. We've tweaked models several times in the like 8 years that Alpha's been like a mainstream company. We've changed our 7.6 heavy. We talk about changing other models all the time based on, you know, how other equipment and fishing techniques are evolving. We only have one line of rods with like, I don't know, 14, 15 SKUs. So like if our 7.6 heavy isn't working anymore, we're going to find another blank or trim it different or run things different based on where the industry is headed. And all of these things will continue to benefit you guys. We're never going to have 30 rods. Like we're not going to have like Daiwa has the Tatula Elites, the Steezes, yeah, you know, there's so many lines within Daiwa, within Megabass, within Shimano, within Dobbins. Like we're never going to do that. Like we have a 7.6 heavy and a 7.3 medium heavy. And like most of our rods, like we find the best one for that technique. And when you balance them out right, when you use really good components, all of a sudden they become a rod also that will serve a wider scope of fishing applications. And you don't need as many in a lineup then. So we offer something really cool, and we offer it direct to consumer. You can't buy Alpha Angler at any other stores. Like you can only buy from our website. And that keeps the price down like 30 to 40% per rod because you're not paying 30 or 40% of that overall price to a retailer. So like instead of a rod costing $400, now it might cost $250.
And it's funny.
And that's big.
Yeah. And it's funny because when we initially recorded, you talked about how when you came on, you were getting rods and we're like bugging them about stuff, you know,
Yeah.
hey, this and this and this. But you know, that comes into some, you know, when you go into product production, it comes into, you know, that outside thinking. But we do have another good question from Mike, and I asked him to explain a little bit. He said, do you ever make modifications to any of the baits you use? I said, hey, can you be more specific? And so he says, well, I know if changing hooks out or adding spinners, just wondering if there's any specific things you might do to some baits. You know, it's still not quite out there because you could do, I mean, when we're talking about bait modifications on hooks and stuff, just on cranking baits, you can do a lot of things. But I don't know, maybe Joe, if you can pull something out of this that you think he's talking about specifically.
I mean, any opportunity that I get to tinker, I'm going to tinker. You know, like I don't use a lot of things outside of soft plastics straight out of the package. I mean, I always think there's some, I mean, again, I have ADHD. I'm gonna mess with stuff. So like I have a lot of Sharpies and a lot of Spike It pens in the boat. I'm not afraid to carve a chunk out of something. Like if I'm flipping a beaver, I might trim those claws. I might, I'm always messing with skirts on jigs and spinner baits and buzz baits. Is skirt on, skirt off. Like I'm not using very much stuff the way it got shipped to me. Yeah, I mean, but do I do anything like really wild? I mean, I don't think I've like found anything cool. I'm not like an innovator. Like
You're not taking your crankbaits and shaving down
yeah,
16ths of inches in the
yeah, yeah,
bill,
yeah. I'm not.
shaving
I
off the
haven't
top
got there.
head. Yeah.
No, I haven't got there. I mean, I'll say this, like, and you mentioned it. I mean, I use very, very few stock hooks on anything I buy.
Mm.
I
Okay,
work
well,
with
so no
I
stock
work with
hooks.
some
Then
cool
what do
stuff.
you? No stock hooks. Then do you have a specific brand of
Oh yeah,
hooks? Okay, so
yeah.
go into that because that's interesting. That's super interesting. Oh, your headphones just died. Mine aren't too far off. Oh shit! I can't hear you. He fucked up the live stream. Yeah, he's fixing it.
Got it. All right. So I heard him die on me. So here's the big thing is like, so if you ever buy a jig or a crankbait and that brand isn't one of the like major hook manufacturers. So like Berkeley obviously has they're having their own hooks produced, right? But like, and Spro uses all Gamakatsu hooks.
Gamakatsu, that's right.
So outside of that, a lot of hooks for a lot of companies are like if you buy a Megabass crankbait, or if you buy I know, like I think a lot of Strike Kings have mustads on them, but outside of any brands that are like partnered, if you go to buy like a Dirty Jigs or your favorite jig, in most cases, a lot of the hooks that are made for these products are made in an OEM factory, right? The number one OEM hook manufacturer in worldwide is BKK. All right. BKK about 5 years ago, started started making under their own brand umbrella instead of just producing these OEM hooks for everybody else's stuff. They finally decided to just be like, you know what, we're gonna manufacture and brand and sell our hooks in our own packaging. So I got hooked up with BKK a little less than a year ago, and I have spent so much money learning that entire line, the saltwater line too. And I use BKK for as much stuff as I can. What I found is that they can take the same diameter hook and it's way stronger and stays sharp way longer than any other twin that is out there, any other doppelganger under a different brand. They stay sharper longer and they're just stronger. They use a different hard, and so Gamakatsu, Owner, Decoy, Mustad, BKK, everybody uses basically the exact same materials. Cause I asked them, I was like, guys, are you guys getting a higher quality steel? Like, is it a higher quality product that you're starting with? Why is yours better? Why do I see they're staying sharper longer? Why do I see that they're stronger? I said, no, and they taught me what I'm about to tell you guys. It's all about the process they use to harden the materials. And they are just using more extensive, more labor intensive, more expensive process to do this. And it's what's offering the highest grade product. And if you like gummies or you like owners, I'm not trying to tell you to change. There was a time in my life where I used to argue with people and be like, you know what, you guys, I'm telling you, this is the best. If you don't want to take my word for it, don't. Like, that's more hooks that are in stock for me, and I'll catch more fish and I'll take it. But if you're the type who is like, you know what, I think I'm going to try them, you should. I'm not trying to sell you guys on anything. Like, it really is the best. They just are. And every single hook they make is better than something someone else makes. I haven't found one that's not yet. There's a couple models that have some like twins too. But BKK is always going to be stronger and sharper. It just is the way that it is. Now, maybe you like different angles or something. And if there's a hook that you're really into, like this angle of the bend, well, then use what you like. But if BKK makes a twin, it's always going to be better than what you're using. I'm telling you right now.
And on hooks with any bait that you're with a treble hook on it, so you're obviously chunking and reeling.
Mm-hmm.
You get into an area where you're catching catfish, you're catching perch, you're catching, you're catching a lot of fish on these that aren't bass that you're looking for. The durability of that hook, mainly how sharp it stays because every time you hook a fish, it's taking away some of that pinpoint pressure and all that.
Yeah.
Like, the average angler isn't going to be changing out treble hooks in the middle of a tournament, or they're not going to have 3 or 4 different baits of that same lure that they're using to be able to change that lure out and throw the other one in the back of the, in the
Especially if you're in a kayak.
Huh?
Especially if you're in a kayak.
Yeah. So, if you're in an area where you're catching a lot of fish, bass, it doesn't matter. You're just hooking a lot of fish. The durability of that hook does matter. And I used to never really care until I started fishing for money in the kayak. And I'm like, these fucking hooks suck. I'm changing these bastards out. And some of our lakes here, this last damn tournament, I caught 30-something fish. Not a damn bass, not a largemouth. But I got to thinking, because I'm using a couple of my crankbaits, and these are the ones that I've caught fish on. I'm like, shit, I'm catching all these fucking catfish. They're hitting it hard as hell. The hooks are in there. They're eating it. I'm pulling. I got the pliers. All this shit. And I'm thinking, damn, what if I catch, a big bass? Is it going to stay hooked? Yep. So the durability of those hooks really does matter over time, especially for the everyday angler, where they're not changing those hooks out after each tournament or each time they go fishing. They're using that same damn lure until they lose it. So the durability of the hooks really does, it does matter, and that quality matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think whether you fish, on the weekends or whether you fish for a living, I think, what's up, Adam? I think it matters. And here's why I'll say that too. Is BKK isn't pricing their hooks higher than their competitors when they're the best. Like pack of treble hooks is like $6-7, and you're, depending on the size, you're getting the same amount as any other brand. So it's easy for me to promote them, just like I promote for Alpha Angler, because the price is either comparable or lower and the quality is better. So that's one of the reasons that I work for both of those brands is, the quality difference is noticeable, and, they're not outpricing any of our consumers, like any of you guys that are interested in using BKK treble hook or a BKK EWG, you're not like going to be all worried that if you lose that bait with those hooks on it or something, you're like, oh man, like I'm totally like, I'm out on my ass, like money wise. No, like they're cheaper or the same price as their twins. So,
yeah. And my anecdotal evidence to hooks is this. I love fishing spooks. This time of year, down here where I am in North Carolina, the spook is and like that's it. They're gonna hit them. And when you buy a spook, it's got the damn stainless steel, whatever saltwater hooks it has on it. And last year, I caught a lot of fish on a spook. When you're fishing, and I fished the Spook Junior and the Super Spook, so big ones. When those fish hit it, they're not getting that whole thing in their mouth. And I started losing fish left and damn right. I was getting pissed and blah blah. So I changed, and I changed to a different hook, a good hook. This is a Gamakatsu hook. And when I changed to that, I quit losing. I was losing fish in tournaments that's pissing me off. It shouldn't have been losing them. I changed hooks. Guess what happened? My hook rate went up. But here's the thing. As those hooks got worn out, I started missing fish again. So I'm like, shit, I got to buy more hooks. That's what it comes down to. In fishing, and God Almighty, this goes back to selling shit. Fishing is so anecdotal.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Even so much of what you talked about today with your fishing experience is anecdotal.
Yeah.
The line, the rod, the reel, the lure, the hooks, they are specific to how you like to fish and how you set the hook and how you play a fish.
Yep.
But we all have to figure that out. But damn, at least give yourself a fighting chance by replacing the hooks on your shit. When the hook gets bent out and you bend it back, don't keep fishing that fucking lure. Buy some more. Buy the hook that you like and put that bitch back on there. Put a new one on there. Don't keep bending that shit out. But that's me because I'm frugal, aka I don't have money. So,
well,
I will buy hooks now. Matter of fact, I just bought a bunch of damn hooks, treble hooks that I keep in my shit for that specific reason. If I lose a fish, and I mean, that's my anecdotal evidence to all of this, and that's fishing in general, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny to like think about. Okay, so has equipment shaped my experience, or has my experience shaped my equipment like preferences? Like chicken or the egg type shit, right? Like which came first, like which drives which. It's funny to think about all of that, but it definitely all comes together. I mean, and our financial our financial situations definitely lead to that. Like if somebody lost their job during COVID, they may have chose a different path than they were previously on in terms of the equipment they chose for the last 2 years, So it's funny to think about all of that though.
But we're talking about something as minuscule as a treble hook, a $6 pack of 4 or 3 treble hooks. You're fishing for what you want to do for a lifestyle, for your career.
Yeah, I mean,
you're gonna make that change more often than the guy just sat there fiddle farting around on the weekend.
Oh, there are certain things that people would probably vomit at, the fact that like there's shit that I will throw away that plenty of people are probably like, oh my God, you won't use that? And I'm like, hell no. Like
you're taking Gamakatsu brand new Gamma hooks off and throwing them in the damn trash.
Yeah. I mean, there is, and don't get me wrong, like I'm kind of a hoarder. There is a lot of things that I will save, but But like even there are things that like that I will not save that most people would be like, you got to be freaking kidding me or throwing that away.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's anecdotal. My experiences have led me to feel a certain way about certain things, and that just is what it is. Like that's the path that I'm on. It's not the path that anybody else is on. And this is how I drive my bus. This is how I run my program. And it's
well, yeah. And it comes down to how you fish too. Like I don't fiddle fart. Like I horse fish.
Fiddle fart?
No, I don't fiddle fart. I horse fish. I want to get them to the kayak and lip them or put them in the net. Like I'm not
Do it.
I'm a gorilla, a bull, whatever the fuck you want to call it, in a china shop.
Yeah.
That's how I fish. So I can't have a willy-nilly hook. I can't have shit that don't work right. So, but Adam says I'm planning on uploading a video of hook points under a microscope. That's interesting. Adam, holla at me on Instagram or Facebook and let's connect, because when you put those up, I want to see that. I think that'd be interesting to see. We got another question real quick from Adam.
Yeah, it depends on the brand. So like I saw that come through the chat. So there are certain types of plastics and certain brands that use certain types of plastics that I will not put them back on a hook. And then there are certain brands and certain types that I'll put them back in the package. And it's just like it's been my experience. Like there are also certain types of baits that I won't put back on a hook. Like I will not put a swim bait on a hook more than once on like a jig head, unless it's by cast. Like this is the one company that makes a type of plastic like that I can reuse. Like it's not Elastec, but it's really, really durable. And like I can take this swim bait off and put it on a different style jig head if I want. This is one of the few companies where I will reuse their plastic.
But all right, real quick. Those companies where you can reuse plastic are typically associated with plastics that are stiffer. Does the motion, and I'm asking because I don't know, does the flexibility, let's take Kitex for instance, right? Kitex are like one fish plastics. Like you catch a fish and that it's fucked. You got to throw it away. But they talk about how the action of that Kitex is so good, but it's so good because the plastic's soft.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense, but the harder the plastic, the more you can reuse it. Does it take away the action, or does it give it action? Or are there baits and lures that are kind of in the middle that do both?
This is where, I mean, it's such a tough answer. If we're speaking in generalities, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of exceptions to the rules. Like there are gems in the industry. I mean, like, so I just gave you one of them, like CAST, super great example. I mean, this is one of like, to the touch, softest materials ever. But then you go and pull on it, and it's like, it's not stretchy like Elastec. Like if this was an Elastec minnow, I could stretch it to like here. I could stretch it 3-4 feet if this was an Elastec. But cast, like that's all the stretch you're gonna get out of it. For some reason, it's really soft, really lifelike, but it just has some durability to it. Like there's a bunch of gems in the industry. This just happens to be one of them. I taught you about one.
Keep talking, because I'm gonna. So all right. So you talk about cast, and you were showing that bait.
Uh-huh.
I fish a lot of lago shad. The Storm
larger
Lago
shed,
shad.
yeah. From is it Rapala or Storm?
Storm. And so obviously it doesn't have the stretch that you're talking about, but it's a firm bait, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hold yours up. Hold that cast up, straight up, like this, like mine. Look at the bend in that versus the bend in this. What is that? Is that a 4-inch?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a 3.8, 3-inch. This is a 3-inch, so it won't have it. But this bait is very durable.
Mm-hmm.
I can catch a lot on it. Doesn't matter what it's on. But what you've been showing,
mm-hmm.
what I've been showing, it seems like if we go back to action and soft versus hard, what you're showing is way. I mean, it's as durable, but it has that action. It's softer, right?
Yeah, it's really like back here in this section that really kicks, like behind that, where's my red hat? Behind that dorsal fin that's up on my hat. That bait just it's crazy soft back there. I mean, it takes nothing at all to get that thing to kick. I mean, that thing wants to kick. So a lot of it too depends on like some baits maybe durable up here in the near where your hook comes out, or they may be durable up here where the hook enters. But if that plastic isn't the right kind of composition, it may be too durable back here also. So I mean, every company's got its own formula and its own kind of thing that it's good at.
So this one right here that I'm shaking in my right hand is a Kitech, same size as the Lago, and if I catch a fish on the Kitech, it's done. That shit goes in the bottom of the boat and I have to clean it out. The Lago rigged the same way. I can re-rig this a couple different times.
Good.
So that's interesting. But again, what does everybody say about the Kitechs? Oh man, it's that action. It's because they're soft.
Yeah, I mean, and again, something about this plastic, it's really soft. Like it doesn't rip. Like it doesn't tear. There's zero salt in this plastic, and it's able to still have like some elasticity to it, which you don't really see out of your standard like rubber, like your standard soft plastics. Like it's neat. It's a cool little proprietary deal, and it doesn't react with your other soft plastic baits like Elastec does. You know how like Elastec will eat like a Senko?
Yeah, it'll eat it. It'll eat it, and then it all turns into fucking goo.
Yeah. This stuff doesn't do that. Like it's cool.
That's interesting.
Like,
that's interesting. And that's what you're throwing on the. Are you? That wasn't a ball head you showed up. What hook?
I that's a Gamakatsu Superline jig head hook. See if it'll zoom in a little better, if it'll focus.
Oh yeah, that's good.
So I like this one because this one has a apparently I don't know my righty tighties, but this one has a screw lock in it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a Gamakatsu Superline. A lot of the swim bait hooks that I use have screw locks in them.
This will be my last question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sounds good.
All right. I know you got to pee. We've been here 2 hours and 40 minutes. You ain't gonna tinkle. You ain't got another Red Bull. I mean,
when you text me and like told me we were gonna do it, I did everything I needed to do before the show.
Okay, well, shit, damn, I done had tinkle twice, but that's how it goes.
Well.
So the small, those 4-inch or less swim baits, right? You're targeting those fish. What's the difference in that head you're using versus Okashira versus a ball head? Like, what are we trying to? does that go back to anecdotal, what I'm comfortable and feel good with, or like, are we getting different actions? Like,
so
when you're fishing those small swim baits on a specific head that you like with forward facing sonar targeting big fish, are you choosing a certain one, or like why are you choosing that jig head?
All right. So first and foremost, for me, largemouth, smallmouth. I have different for both. All right. And then the next question becomes baitcaster, spinning rod. All right. Then the next question becomes 3, 4, 5-inch. What are we throwing? So all three of those things are really important. I mean, and I'm sure if I fished more spotted bass, that would be a bigger question in the equation as well, even though I'd probably be using a lot of the same things I'm using for smallies.
Smaller, yeah.
So, like those are the three really important questions. Bait size, fish species, and baitcaster or spinning rod. They're big. So like for this one, 4-inch swim bait, largemouth, baitcaster. That's my hook for that application.
Does real speed and real line matter on that?
Again, I use alpha anglers and really high end line. Like the equation has wide margins, so I can change line size and like still get away with being able to kind of still use this in this application. Yeah. I mean, but smallies, like there are a bunch of different heads I use, like between the Okashira head. I wish they made a 1/4 ounce Okashira head. I use a couple other brands. And again, now when I go to those smallies, it depends on a big one. Like I have 3 different heads depending on just for smallmouth, depending on line or bait, like which bait I'm using, which size head, and whether it's spinning or bait casting, like just to be on smallmouth.
So, all right, why the different heads? Is it an action? Is it sink rate?
It's a lot of times like, what a lot of brands will do is when they go from like a 1/4 to like say a 1/2 ounce, they may use the exact same hook. And when you start wadding up lead, now you start like changing the gaps between the hook point and the line tie. Like if that ball head starts to get bigger and wad up, now you're changing how much room you have and how much bite is there to get a smallmouth, caught when he goes and tries to eat that thing. So like I've found that like in a 1/4 ounce and in 3/8, I like one brand, but in a 1/2 ounce, I like another better. And that's all for smallies using like a 3 or a 4-inch on a spinning rod. But I'll use different in a 1/2 ounce than I will in 1/4 and 3/8. And it matters because a lot of these brands they don't make everything in the same dimensions. When the hook gets bigger or the ball head gets bigger, the hook, they don't change things. They think, okay, like, so they might have a 1/4 ounce and a 1/2 ounce that sucks ass. And like, it pisses me off. So I have to go find another 1/2 ounce freaking head I like better. So like,
Joe's over there with a file the day before a tournament with a micrometer being like, but hey, this relates to spinner baits a little bit too.
Yeah.
You know how you
100%.
have spinner baits that they're a 1/2 ounce and the 1/2 ounce is all in the head versus a spinner bait that has a small head. And then there's whatever ounceage that's built into below the head into that first part of the hook.
Well, and and I get it with football jigs too. So like when I fish a jig in a river, okay. So you might have a 3/8 that gets hung up all the time. but a half ounce that doesn't get hung up. And a lot of that'll be based on, well, is all of the weight in the head or does some of the weight run down the shank? And what size chunk rock are you fishing? And like, oh man.
So I started, so I really got into shaky head fishing here this year. And I bought a few different shaky heads to try. And two of the shaky heads that I tried get caught up in the rock. I mean, I got to break off or pedal over there to get the shit out. Versus the one shaky head that I got, it comes through all that stuff. So, I mean, yeah. Yeah, go do what you got to do real quick.
Oh, so I thought we were going to wrap it up.
Oh, yeah. All right.
No, last question. Finish.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's the shape of the heads and where the weight goes. That's interesting. Dude, God, this little tidbit, oh my God. People, we got 5 people and we've had 5 to 7 all night. There's a lot of people that missed a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Do you ever use flukes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I have all kinds. Like Cast actually makes like one of these that has a grub tail on the back. I really like to swim that grub tail. It's the 4-inch version, but instead of the boot tail, it's got a grub tail. So if I'm like using like a fluke style bait on the back of a chatterbait or as a trailer, I go with Casts a lot now as a spinnerbait trailer and as a buzzbait trailer. And I really like that one. If I'm using it to fish a fluke, like herring style for like, or like to have it dart around. Yeah, I mean, I don't use the Cast one. I have a couple different ones that I like. It depends on like how fast I'm moving it. Like Berkeley makes a good max scent one. X Zone, who I work with, makes a good one that darts around really nicely. Strike King, I use those for years and years. That caffeine shad, smallies seem to just gnarly choke it deep.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
All right. So Joe, holler. We've talked about Alpha. You've talked about some other people. Is there anybody else you want to holler at? We're going to wrap this up right now. We've been 2 hours and 47 minutes. This is great.
I mean, really, just the best stuff that I can say to everybody. Like it, watch our podcast too. Like watch Serious Angler too. Like
what podcast is yours now? Can't say that without saying.
Yeah, I mean, like Big Bass Dreams is on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Big Ass Dreams, as I used to call it.
Yep. So like, but my point is like, watch Serious Angler. I'm trying to think, what are some of the other ones I like?
Bass and Brews.
Yeah, and Bass University, and just like put these on and listen. Like you learn so much from just putting the stuff on in the background, stuff you'll absorb and not even realize it. And yeah, I mean, do it. Definitely do it.
Anybody that's got any questions, where do they find you? Where can they send you questions to answer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you guys are welcome. You can DM me at Joe Labarbera Fishing on Instagram. You can message Big Bass Dreams. I run their social media. I run Alpha Angler's social media. Like, yeah, I mean, I do customer service for a lot of brands through their social medias. So, yeah, just don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions. There's a lot of guys like me, too, who run social media for a lot of brands. So anytime you have questions, like, don't be afraid to reach out to a company. You'll find out real quick, like if the person behind the typey is somebody that knows what they're talking about or not. Like, I mean, I'll answer you really honestly on the pages that I run. And I think you guys are pretty smart shoppers. I'm sure at this point you'll figure out if people are just trying to sell you more baits or if they're really willing to like give you honest opinions.
Yeah, so holler at Joe if you have any questions outside of this. Do not holler at Bass and Brews because we're going to send you to Joe or somebody else. But yeah, hey man, thank you for coming on. thank you for all the engagement from folks tonight. This was impromptu. We had a shitload of questions. We had some good ones. Had a lot of interaction. That's awesome. We're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna head on out. Joe, any parting words, Hoss?
I like turtles. I don't know.
Look, we talked about so much shit tonight, and I can promise you, between Joe and I, we didn't talk about a 16th of what we could continue to keep doing. Thank y'all. We're gonna wrap this up. Bass and Brews podcast, Big Bass Dreams podcast, Alpha Angler Rods here with Joe. Holler at him if you have any more questions. Thank you. This is Bass and Brews. It's going to be 1.5 seconds to get the shit together. Hey-o!